Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored, on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is Monday, November 19th, 2018, the 11th of Kislev, 5779. Hanukkah is just around the corner. I am here in beautiful Jerusalem where the weather is perfect. This is the perfect weather. I mean, you know, those people who know me know I love the rain, so I wish it was raining, okay, first of all. But in terms of just a wonderful, beautiful fall day here in the land of Israel, you can't get any better than this. Hope you're doing well in your part of the world. Don't forget, you can get in touch with me anytime. Josh at thelandofisrael.com is my email. On Facebook, it's Joshua Hasten, and on Twitter at Josh Hasten. It's pretty amazing. Last Monday, I interviewed Dan Diker from the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, and we talked about the situation down in Gaza on Israel's southwestern border. Just several hours after that interview was recorded, Hamas, over a 25-hour period, and all the other terror groups in Gaza fired almost 500 rockets at the state of Israel and its civilians. It started with the firing of that missile at a bus where soldiers just got off just outside of Gaza. And for 25 hours, we were uncertain what the future would hold, whether Israel would go to war. We didn't know what was going on, but the people in southern Israel, in Ashkelon and in Sderot and all the kibbutzim along the border, were essentially in the shelters for those 25 hours. One person was killed in a rocket attack in Ashkelon, several others seriously wounded, about almost 100 people treated for shock. And in addition, Israel lost a true warrior. That was the incident right before the rockets started raining down on Israel, when a group of commandos inside Gaza were spotted. And there was a firefight, and M, as he is known, we can't reveal his identity, was killed. A commando from northern Israel with a family. Very, very sad that we lost him. He died a hero. More information has been released about the incident itself. Apparently he drew gunfire towards him, and he saved his other commandos. That's just from reports that I read over the course of the week. So you had that incident. We killed 6 or 7 terrorists, including a top tunnel, Hamas tunnel. I don't know, what do you want to call him? A contractor, a terrorist. So we killed him. Next thing you know, 25 hours of rockets. And go back and listen to that interview with Dan Diker. I'm not just saying it because I interviewed him. I'm saying it because he, regardless of the rockets, before the rockets, he explained the situation down in Gaza. Now, I don't necessarily agree with Israel's rationale, but Diker gives that rationale so you can understand that reality, which holds true till today, even after the rockets were raining down. Now, it's crazy because here we are 6 days later, and it seems like it never happened. I'm not talking about for the residents of the South, who I stand with entirely, who have been protesting the fact that Israel then agreed to a ceasefire with the Hamas terror organization via Egypt and via the other partners there, Qatar and whatnot. So I understand, I can relate to the people in the South who are not happy, who realize that it's just a matter of time before the next round of rockets. The weekly protests continue on the Gaza-Israel border. That's still going on. Who knows about the kites and about the balloons and everything else? Time will tell if they continue down that path as well. But what's crazy is now we are in election mode here in Israel. It's gone from an almost a near war in Gaza to focusing on potential elections. The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, is trying to avoid elections. He does not want early elections at this juncture. So why are we in the situation where we now have a 61, a razor-thin majority? Defense Minister Lieberman, after that rocket barrage, decided, he says, that Israel was not strong enough in its response. And maybe that is true, maybe that isn't true. Let's remember, former Defense Minister Lieberman threatened that if he would become defense minister, he would take out the head of Hamas. He would kill him in 48 hours. That never happened. So now we are playing politics. Defense minister resigns, and he, of course, trying to garner votes whenever that next election will be. He is trying to appear as if he is taking a stand against Prime Minister Netanyahu, that he resigned out of protest vis-a-vis Israel's policy towards Hamas. So he's taking a major gamble by resigning, and perhaps the public bought into it. But as time goes on, if this government, and by the time you listen to this, the government may have fallen, but as of now, that razor-thin 61 majority is still the situation. That's still the case. Over time, perhaps people will forget about the fact that Lieberman resigned, and they will punish him at the ballot box. So the Prime Minister last night spoke at 8 p.m. to the nation, essentially saying that he would like to hold off early elections. He doesn't want to go to elections now. He was citing another situation in 1992 where the so-called right-wing government, if you will, at the time decided to fold. That government folded, and what happened in the end? You got the Rabin Peres government, then you got the Oslo Accords. So he alluded to that last night as well in his statements. And he also talked about the fact that he has a plan. He says he has a clear plan. He knows what to do, when to do it in regard to our security, in regard to the welfare of the state of Israel. He says he has a plan. Now, what bothers me is the fact that Ariel Sharon also said, he used similar language. He said, what I see here, where I'm standing as Prime Minister of the State of Israel, what I see here, you don't see there. Meaning you don't understand. The general public is not privy to the information which the Prime Minister of the State of Israel has. Nevertheless, when Ariel Sharon made those comments, the next thing he did was pull 10,000 Jews and all the bodies out of Gush Katif, and we're in the situation we're in today as a result, where every few years or every few months, whatever it is, Hamas decides they're going to go for another round of violence, of terror, of rocket fire, of digging tunnels, of kite incendiary devices, of balloons, and whatnot. So as a result, direct result of the pullout from Gush Katif, when the Prime Minister claimed, I know more than you know, well, he didn't, or he did it anyway. So I cannot subscribe to this logic of I know better than you because I am here. We've seen that before. We've seen that story play out before. So Ayelet Shaked, the Justice Minister, Naftali Bennett, the Education Minister, Bennett actually met with the Prime Minister demanding that he would become the next Defense Minister. That didn't happen as of now. And as of today, this morning, I'm now recording at 9:30 a.m. on Monday morning, there are rumors that Naftali Bennett, the Education Minister, and Ayelet Shaked will resign from their ministerial posts, taking their parties with them. Therefore, Israel will not have a majority coalition and no other choice but going to early elections. So that's where things stand. It's a little bit complicated, but if you go to the Jerusalem Post and other publications, they can help you understand everything going on. I did my best to explain it. But we might be having early elections in March. They're actually scheduled for November 2019, but we may have them as early as March. The Prime Minister would prefer, according to different commentators, prefer in May, after he goes to AIPAC, after Purim, after Yom Ha'atzmaut, Yom HaZikaron. It also delays the ripple effects from Avigdor Lieberman, the defense minister, resigning. So in this crazy country that we love so much called Israel, again, six days after 460 plus rockets rained down on our southern communities, we're now already in a different phase. It's like almost like it didn't happen. And again, I'm not trying to minimize the suffering of the men, women, and especially the children down in southern Israel. I mean, their plight should be front and center until there is an ultimate resolution in Gaza. And those who have listened to my show know what I would do. I would shut off the electricity, shut off the water, shut off the internet, and say goodbye for now. Eventually, I would reestablish those communities which were so unjustly destroyed in Gush Katif. But for now, I would say to Hamas, we are not dealing with you. We're not working with you. We are locking the borders. We are done with this humanitarian aid, which just goes into the Hamas coffers and enables them to continue down their path of jihad against the state of Israel. Why supply them with the fuel they use for the rockets, which they've turned around and fire against us? I don't get it. Dan Diker last week explained why we do this, and I still don't subscribe. I still say shut down Gaza, shut down the borders. Egypt wants to get involved, let Egypt get involved. We should not enable this Hamas terror group to turn their rockets on us. So that, in a nutshell, is what's going on politically. And when you talk about not only Hamas but the Palestinian Authority, who was essentially irrelevant when it came to this latest round down in Gaza, but they're continuing business as usual, inciting against the Jews of the state of Israel. Reported by Khaled Abu Tuame in the Jerusalem Post this morning, the Palestinian Authority is saying that Israel is planning a religious war. Jewish tours of the Temple Mount are part of an Israeli scheme to ignite a religious war, the Palestinian Authority said on Sunday. And why is this so dangerous, these statements? Because this is essentially a blood libel. So many lives have been lost because of blood libels carried out by the Palestinian Authority and by Hamas against the Jews of Israel. What do you think happened in 1929 when 67 souls were murdered in Hebron and there were riots in Jerusalem and in other places? It was a blood libel accusing the Jews of storming the Temple Mount when all Jews want to do is pray up there like any other group of people. So the PA is inciting to violence, and this is where it starts. It always starts at the Temple Mount. The article says this allegation that Israel was igniting a religious war came in response to a visit to the Mount by Agriculture Minister Uri Ariel. Of course, that was the excuse used by the PA to launch, and Yasser Arafat to launch the second so-called Intifada. I call it the Oslo War back in 2000, accusing the Prime Minister, he wasn't the Prime Minister at the time, Ariel Sharon, of sparking the violence, even though we know that they were already planning this terror wave. In recent years, the PA has been regularly condemning visits by Jewish groups and individuals to the Temple Mount, claiming, as it says here, they were, quote, storming the Al-Aqsa. This is dangerous rhetoric. Dangerous. This is what inspires. I won't even call them lone wolves, because they're not lone wolves if they've been inspired to hate by the Palestinian Authority, even if the PA doesn't directly say, go murder a Jew, and they say plenty of that on their official television and on the radio and whatnot, their educational system, and in the schools and in the mosques. They basically say that. And these lone wolves who people claim, well, the PA didn't actually send this terrorist to go out and carry this out. They create the environment for the terror. They incite. And this is a blood libel when you talk about the Temple Mount and accusing Jews. This is our holiest site, people. Our holiest site. Okay, so Jews have the right to be up there. Jews should have the right to pray there, but that's not always the case. Moving on here, the Golan Heights will forever stay a part of Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu said on yesterday at the introduction to his cabinet meeting, his weekly Sunday cabinet meeting. He also thanked the United States for voting. There was a resolution, of course, Friday at the United Nations, as they do every year, talk about Israel ceding the Golan to Syria. So the vote was 151. The vote passed 151 to 2, 14 abstentions. Of course, those two being Israel and the U.S. there. Again, this is a non-binding resolution. It's the General Assembly of the UN. And it's amazing how they continue to pass this each and every year. Doesn't matter that 500,000 are dead in Syria. Doesn't matter that country's in turmoil. Doesn't matter that horrible, whether you're talking about the Assad regime, whether you're talking about ISIS, whether you're talking about Hezbollah, Iranian influences. Doesn't matter who's in charge or calling the shots over there in Syria. Doesn't matter. Israel's still called upon to relinquish the strategic highlands of the Golan Heights each and every year. Now, the U.S. officially has not changed its position, has not officially endorsed the fact that Israel annexed the Golan back in 1981, but nevertheless, the U.S. Not abstaining, but siding with Israel, voting against this ridiculous resolution at the UN calling on Israel to turn over more land. You want to give more land to the jihadists, more land to Assad, more land to ISIS? Who do you want to give the land to? Who are you going to turn it over to? The butcher in Damascus, Assad, who drops barrel bombs, chemical bombs on his own people? You want him to be able to dip his feet in the Kinneret? Is that the plan? No, that's not the plan. That will never happen. Golan Heights will forever stay part of Israel, says our Prime Minister. And that's the way it should be. Okay, we are going to take a short break. Be right back. My name is Josh Hasten. This is Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. Get in touch with me during the week, Josh at thelandofisrael.com, on Facebook, Joshua Hasten, on Twitter at Josh Hasten. Coming right back to you. Don't go anywhere. Big shout out to Benjamin Bresky, engineer extraordinaire, for all the work he does in getting these shows up, and Tabitha Epstein as well. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
The question is, why are the Jews there in the first place? The Jewish people have been yearning to return to their ancient homeland for a long time.
The Yishai Fleischer Show, the voice of a new generation of pro-Israel activists.
And there's only two kinds of minorities in the Middle East, armed or unarmed.
Inspiring minds to think differently.
That jihadism doesn't just attack Jews. It attacks Christians, and it mostly attacks Muslims.
Inspiration, spirituality, and politics.
So first and foremost, this country is here to defend Jewish people and to live in its ancestral homeland.
Listen to the Yishai Fleischer Show every week on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.
And we are back. Josh Hasten here. Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is the 19th of November, 2018, the 11th of Kislev 577 night, coming to you here on Monday morning from a beautiful Jerusalem. There are other items in the news that I would like to get to. One thing I don't think I mentioned before, I forgot, I think, to announce that Prime Minister Netanyahu actually decided that he would be the one retaining the defense portfolio. I don't know if I mentioned that before. He himself, that was a position that was that Naftali Bennett, Minister Bennett, was hoping that he would receive after meeting with the Prime Minister, I believe, on Friday morning. So as of now, the Prime Minister is also the Foreign Minister and several other ministers, Minister of Aliyah and Absorption, and Health Minister. He's a bunch of ministers right now. A lot of people are just saying that is just not sustainable. But as of now, he is also the Defense Minister, which is important to note, with Avigdor Lieberman resigning. And speaking of Lieberman resigning, that was celebrated in Gaza. The Jewish press reports that Hamas terrorists led their minions on the streets in Gaza, celebrating the last day of Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman's role. Political cartoons, commentaries, photos showing young male Gazans handing out candies and pastries to passerbys on the street and in the marketplace, celebrating the occasion, were all over the place in social media in the Arabic language there coming out of Gaza. Again, they saw this as a victory, causing our defense minister to step down. And you can go online. It's not that hard to find. You can see all the images there of the Gazans celebrating. I saw some pretty, some scary, I would call them, disturbing videos of Islamic Jihad and some of the new rocket technology, which they claim that they used in this latest round to fire on Ashkelon. So they are spending their days not educating their children for peace, not building schools and hospitals, but using the so-called humanitarian aid, which doesn't get to the people, more or less, using that equipment to go ahead and manufacture these new types of rockets and missiles. Of course, a little bit more difficult now, since Egypt cracked down on the tunnels going into Gaza for them to get these weapons from outside of the strip there. So they're manufacturing a lot from using in-house parts And I remember the days where you could make one of these rockets for like 10 shekel. Well, it seems like it costs a little bit more now. A bigger payload, more damage, and upon impact here in Israel, unfortunately. But you can see these very, very disturbing videos. And again, they're celebrating this as a victory. They're celebrating the resignation of Lieberman as a victory. I mean, this is something we've been kicking the can down the road now for 13 years, at least. I mean, the rockets have been flying now for 17 years, more or less. Let's not forget that over 5,000 rockets were actually launched on the communities in Gush Katif, even before there was an Iron Dome or anything to protect them or any of that stuff. Okay, they just got rockets. And one person was killed, I believe, in 5 years of rockets there. Then, of course, we left Gush Katif, and the rockets increased by 500%. But this thing isn't finishing anytime soon. Earlier, we mentioned the UN General Assembly calling on Israel to withdraw from the Golan, give it to Syria, and the craziness which that is, turning it over to the Syrians as they are murdering and killing and dropping chemical bombs on each other. But here we have, unfortunately, she's retiring, U.S. Ambassador, well, at least from this position, to the UN, Nikki Haley, a beacon of hope and light in our world. Haley, according to Ynet, promoting a new UN resolution against Hamas after the U.S. opposed the annual draft resolution at the UN calling on Israel to rescind its authority in the Golan. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, expected to submit a draft resolution at the GA condemning that terror organization. Haley, who's leaving her position at the end of the year, is promoting a resolution condemning Hamas's rocket fire at Israel, incitement against Israel, as well as demanding to halt any violent activity, including the launching of incendiary balloons from Gaza into Israel. I'm curious to know how many votes this is going to get. Okay. They were able to pass the other vote calling on Israel to give away the Golan by, what was it, 151-2 with 10 abstentions. Let's see how many countries vote against Hamas in favor of Nikki Haley's resolution. An additional provision in the draft obtained by Ynet and Yediot focuses on Hamas's terror tunnels and calls on the UN to condemn the terror organization's use of civilian resources for military purposes. Thank you, Nikki Haley. She's going to be missed. I don't remember the name of the person replacing her, but no doubt about it. I mean, she will sorely be missed. A true friend of Israel. I mean, she was just a rock star, superstar, the best thing we've ever seen here since sliced bread. An IDF force opened fire at a Palestinian Arab village, at a vehicle rather, in the Palestinian Arab village of Deir Abu Mashal, reported by Israel National News, located west of Ramallah. This happened overnight, last night, Sunday night. 4 Arabs wounded in the incident, 1 seriously. IDF investigating. I'm assuming that this was an anti-terror operation. Things like this don't just happen. And as I'm speaking to you right now, I see here that according to Moked 443, Arabs throwing rocks at cars near El Arub. That's just a couple hundred meters away from the Gush Etzion junction. For those who don't realize, I mean, I get on my phone pretty much every reported rock attack throughout Judea and Samaria, and some days I get 10, some days I get 20. It all depends on the day, but the rocks are still raining down on our vehicles, on our cars. I know a group of protesters on the eastern side of Gush Etzion came out over the last several weeks protesting the situation, but as I'm talking to you now, another rock attack, thank God without injury, in Gush Etzion. But not enough people are talking about it. Rocks can kill, folks. We've seen it, unfortunately, many times in the past. Rocks can kill, and more has to be done to stop the rock attacks. Alan Dershowitz, renowned law school professor, attorney Alan Dershowitz, chastising his own party, the Democrats, the Democratic Party, over the weekend, accusing the party of turning a blind eye to the growing anti-Semitism of the far left, calling out people like Democratic National Committee Deputy Chairman Keith Ellenson, saying he's not doing enough to condemn hate coming out of the Nation of Islam and leader Louis Farrakhan. warning that the Democratic Party was tolerating anti-Semitism. Again, this is somebody who's a diehard Democrat. Dershowitz will tell you that himself, all his life a Democrat. But he's definitely come around over the years in terms of recognizing what's best for Israel and supporting Israel. And, of course, he stands by Israel, recognizing that not everyone over there in the Democratic Party, to put it mildly, is a friend. I'm not saying we don't have friends, but not everyone there is a friend and supporter of the Jewish state of Israel. Not everyone there should be giving a hall pass when it comes to anti-Semitism. Dershowitz said that the party failed to distance himself from anti-Semitism on its ideological fringes. In the same manner, he says, the Republican Party had, referencing Bill Clinton's sharing a stage with Farrakhan at a memorial service for Aretha Franklin this past September. So there you have a Democrat calling out the Democrats for not doing enough to stand up against anti-Semitism. And then, of course, a few of these radicals who are now elected to Congress, one from Minnesota, it's pronounced Ilhan Omar from Minnesota, and there was another woman from Michigan who was elected and didn't wave the U.S. flag, but waved the so-called Palestinian flag when she was elected, and others. Let's finish the show with some good news. Tourism in Israel. Despite it all, this is the craziest thing. I mean, you have these rocket attacks, nearly 500 rockets raining down. You have the rocket attacks. The other day, there was an attempted stabbing at a police station in Jerusalem. Several officers were lightly wounded. The terrorist was neutralized. Despite all this craziness, Israel is still the place to be. According to the Jerusalem Post, tourist record broken. Expected to pass 4 million tourists in 2018. The number of incoming tourists surpassed last year's record of 3.6 million on this past Friday. And the tourism ministry is projecting that we will hit over 4 million tourists by the end of the year. That translates into 18 billion shekel in revenue since January. Bottom line, people are still coming to Israel, thank God, en masse. That is amazing news. It's amazing for the economy. It's amazing for morale. It's great to see the streets of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and all the other cities packed with tourists from abroad wanting to get a glimpse of life and experience life here. Beautiful life in the land of Israel. So let's end on that good news. With that, we'll call it a day. It is the 19th of November, 2018, the 11th of Kislev 5779, Hanukkah fastly approaching in Israel and all over the world for the Jewish people, the holiday of light. Thanks again to Benjamin Bresky, Tabitha Epstein, everyone else. If you missed any part of the show, go back and you can always catch it on the Land of Israel Network, at thelandofisrael.com, on my Facebook page, SoundCloud, iTunes, and we're on something else called, what's it called now? Spotify. See, I'm old that I'm still, Facebook and Twitter, and that's about it. I haven't even gotten to Instagram yet. Spotify. So you can hear us now on Spotify as well. That's a wrap from Jerusalem. Most importantly, between now and when we speak again next week, everyone out there in the wonderful world of ours, be safe. Shalom, shalom from the eternal capital of the Jewish people. Bye-bye.
Torah thoughts and inspiration from the heartland of Israel. Tune in every week to The Soul of Israel with Rabbi Shlomo Katz on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.